The ancient ship drifted in the cold darkness of space, its metal hull scarred by 1,000 years of radiation and micrometeors. Captain Ben Taylor watched through the viewport as his boarding team cut through the outer airlock. The ship had no power, no life signs. Nothing but the mystery of where it came from and why it was here. "We're in," came the voice through his comm. "The air is stale but breathable. Someone built this thing to last." Ben floated through the corridors of the dead vessel, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The walls were covered in strange symbols that hurt to look at directly. His team moved carefully, weapons ready. But there was nothing alive here. There hadn't been for a very long time. Dr. Lisa Carter was already at work in what looked like the ship's data core. Banks of alien computers lined the walls, their surfaces dark and silent. "The power systems are completely drained," she said, running her scanner over the machinery. "But the data storage looks intact. If we can get some power to it." 3 days later, they had their answer. Back on the Human Research Station, Lisa stood before a room full of military officers and scientists. Admiral Jake Morrison sat at the head of the table, his weathered face serious as he studied the reports. "The ship belongs to a race called the Kethamari," Lisa began, activating the holographic display. "They were wiped out exactly 1,000 years ago. But they left us a warning." The hologram showed star maps, battle reports, and images that made everyone in the room go quiet. Massive biomechanical ships, each one the size of a small moon. Planets stripped bare of all life and resources. Entire solar systems left as empty shells. "They call them the Devourers," Lisa continued. "They're not biological. They're not fully mechanical either. They're something in between. They travel through dark space between the galaxies, feeding on advanced civilizations." Admiral Morrison leaned forward. "How advanced?" "That's the problem. They target societies that have reached interstellar travel and advanced technology, like us. Like all the species in the Galactic Council." The room erupted in voices. Questions, arguments, demands for more proof. Morrison raised his hand for silence. "What's their pattern?" he asked. Lisa brought up a timeline. "Every 1,000 years, they return to this galaxy. They harvest the most advanced civilizations first, then work their way down. The Kethmari calculated they had about 5 years from the first signs until the Devourers arrived in their system." "And when did the Kethmari see the first signs?" 1,005 years ago. The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. Morrison stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. "We need to warn the Council," he said. "All of them. Every species, every government. They need to know what's coming." 2 weeks later, Ambassador Kate Williams stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Harmony Council. Representatives from 7 different species sat in their assigned sections, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes under the dome lights. Kate had been Earth's voice to the galaxy for 12 years. She had negotiated trade agreements, settled disputes, and built the relationships that kept humanity safe among the older, more established civilizations. But she had never delivered news like this. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "Humanity has discovered evidence of a threat to our entire galaxy. We believe an ancient enemy will return within the next 5 years." The Zalathi representative, Prime Minister Veltar, was the first to respond. His tall, elegant form rose gracefully from his seat. "Ambassador Williams, humanity has been part of this council for only 37 years. Perhaps you do not yet understand the difference between verifiable intelligence and unfounded speculation." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Kate felt her heart sink, but she pressed on. "Prime Minister, we have physical evidence. Data cores from a ship that survived the last attack. Detailed records of—" "Records from whom?" interrupted Councillor Drax of the Korthax Federation. His forearms gestured dismissively. "From a species that claims to have existed 1,000 years ago? Convenient that they are not here to verify your story." Kate activated her holographic display, showing the images from the Kethmari ship. The chamber fell quiet as the pictures of devastation played out above their heads. This is what happened to every advanced civilization in this galaxy 1,000 years ago, she said. The pattern is clear. The timeline is predictable. We have at most 5 years to prepare. Prime, Minister Veltar stood again. Even if we accept your dramatic presentation as fact, what exactly are you proposing? That 7 peaceful civilizations abandoned their way of life to prepare for war against shadows and legends? I'm proposing we work together to militarize our societies. Draketh's voice was sharp with anger. To become like humans obsessed with weapons and warfare? Our civilizations have moved beyond such primitive thinking. Kate looked around the chamber. She saw doubt, dismissal, and something worse, contempt. These beings looked at humanity the same way adults looked at children playing with toy soldiers. The evidence is clear, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The Devourers will return. They will target the most advanced worlds first. If we don't prepare together, we'll fall separately. The Velnari matriarch, ancient and supposedly wise, spoke for the first time. Her voice was soft but carried across the chamber without effort. Young ambassador, your species has brought much energy to our council, but perhaps this energy has become enthusiasm for conflict where none exists. We have achieved peace through cooperation, not through preparation for imaginary wars. The vote was not even close. By a margin of 6-1, the council formally censured humanity for spreading unfounded alarm among peaceful civilizations. Only the Terran delegation voted against the measure. As Kate gathered her materials, Prime Minister Veltar approached her. His expression was not unkind, but it was condescending. Ambassador, I understand your concern for galactic security, but surely you can see how this appears to other species. Humans arrive claiming ancient enemies are returning, demanding military preparations. It seems convenient for a species known for its weapons industry. Kate looked at him for a long moment. Prime Minister, I hope you're right. I hope we're wrong about everything. But if we're not, this conversation will haunt both of us. 3 days later, Admiral Morrison received Kate's full report in his office aboard the UTS Defender. He read it twice, then set it aside and stared out at the stars. Sir? Captain Taylor stood in the doorway. The ambassador's shuttle has docked. She's requesting an immediate meeting. Morrison nodded. Send her in. And Ben? Start pulling together. The department heads. All of them. When Kate entered, her face told him everything he needed to know. They didn't listen, she said. I didn't expect them to. Morrison stood and walked to his star charts. They see us as the new kids, the violent ones who don't understand their peaceful ways. Jake, they're going to die. All of them. And they'll take billions of innocent people with them. Morrison was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was cold and determined. Then we prepare alone. And when the Devourers come, we'll be the only ones ready to fight. Kate felt a chill run down her spine. She knew that tone. She had heard it before. During humanity's civil wars, during the colony rebellions. It was the voice of a man who had made a terrible decision and would see it through to the end. What are you planning? Morrison turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that frightened her, more than the thought of ancient enemies returning from dark space. To save the galaxy, he said, whether it wants to be saved or not. 2 years had passed since the Galactic Council rejected humanity's warning. In the sprawling shipyards hidden in the asteroid belt beyond Pluto, thousands of workers labored in secret. Colonel Amy Brooks watched the final hull plates being welded onto the UTS Vengeance, the newest and deadliest ship in humanity's growing fleet. How many do we have ready? Asked Commander Roy Davis, checking his data pad as another ship emerged from the construction bay. 47 combat vessels, all equipped with the new weapons, Amy replied. Chief Engineer Sam Parker says the particle cannons are running at 95% efficiency, better than we hoped. Roy nodded, but his expression remained grim. It won't be enough if we're wrong about their numbers. We're not wrong. Amy pulled up the holographic displays showing deep space monitoring stations. Every calculation, every piece of data from the Kethmari ship points to the same thing. They're coming, and they're coming soon. Across the galaxy, the other civilizations continued their peaceful existence. The Zalathi had just opened a new cultural center on their third moon. The Korthax Trade Federation was celebrating record profits. The Velnari were hosting their annual Festival of Harmony. None of them had increased their military spending. None of them had built new weapons. They believed they had moved beyond such primitive concerns. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the latest intelligence reports. His hair had more gray in it now, and the lines around his eyes had deepened. The weight of preparing for a war that everyone else denied was coming had aged him. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Outer System Monitoring Station," reported the communications officer. Morrison felt his blood turn cold. They weren't supposed to detect anything for another 6 months, according to their calculations. "Put it through." The face of Lieutenant Sarah King appeared on the main screen. Her expression was tight with barely controlled fear. "Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts, sir. They're huge." Morrison's hands gripped the armrests of his command chair. "How many?" 17 confirmed, sir. Possibly more behind them. They're moving toward the inner systems at approximately 30% light speed, but they weren't heading for human space first. Morrison watched the tactical display and felt his heart sink. The massive contacts were moving directly toward the Zalathi home system. "Get me the Galactic Council emergency channel," he ordered. Within minutes, the panicked faces of alien leaders filled his screen. Prime Minister Veltar looked nothing like the composed diplomat who had dismissed humanity's warnings 2 years ago. His elegant features were twisted with terror. "Admiral Morrison, you must help us. The attacks began an hour ago. We've lost contact with our outer colonies. Our defense fleet—" His voice broke. "They destroyed our entire defense fleet in minutes." Morrison's expression didn't change. "What attacks, Prime Minister? I thought there were no ancient enemies returning." "Please, we were wrong. You were right. The creatures you warned us about, they're real and they're destroying everything." On another screen, Counselor Dract of the Korthax was screaming similar pleas. His forearms waved frantically as explosions lit up the space behind him. "Our trade routes are cut. Our merchant ships are being consumed. Admiral, we need your help immediately." Morrison looked at each desperate face in turn. 2 years ago, they had voted to censure humanity for spreading unfounded alarm. Now they wanted humanity to save them. "I seem to recall a vote," Morrison said calmly. "Something about humans being warmongers who didn't understand peaceful civilization." The final tally was 6-1 against taking any action. "That was different," Veltar shouted. "We didn't know." "You didn't want to know," Morrison replied. "There's a difference." The transmission from the Zalathi home system suddenly cut to static. Prime Minister Veltar's desperate face was replaced by an empty signal. Morrison knew what that meant. The Zalathi capital world, with its 1 billion inhabitants, was gone. Dr. Lisa Carter entered the bridge, her face pale as she studied the incoming data. "Jake, the energy signatures match everything we found in the Kethmari records. These are definitely the Devourers." "How bad is it?" Morrison asked. "Worse than we thought. Their ships are larger than the records indicated, and they're not just harvesting resources. They're consuming entire planets, converting all matter into energy for their fleet." Commander Davis pulled up a galactic map. Red zones spread across it like a disease, marking systems that had gone silent. "At this rate, they'll consume 70% of galactic civilization within 6 months. Morrison watched the red zones expand. Each one represented billions of lives lost, entire cultures wiped out in hours. The beings who had laughed at humanity's warnings were learning the price of their arrogance. More emergency transmissions flooded in. The surviving Velnari leaders begged for sanctuary. Korthax merchant princes offered their entire treasuries for protection. Smaller species that had never paid attention to humanity suddenly wanted to negotiate defense agreements. "What are your orders, sir?" Commander Davis asked. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Through the bridge windows he could see the human fleet preparing for battle. 47 ships against an enemy that had already destroyed hundreds of alien vessels. Sir, we're receiving another transmission, the communications officer reported. It's from the remaining Zalathi survivors. They're offering complete surrender if we'll accept them as refugees. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The Devourer fleet was methodically working its way through the galaxy, consuming every advanced civilization in its path. Just as the Kethmari records had predicted, they were targeting the most technologically developed worlds first. Admiral, Dr. Carter said quietly, our colonies will be among their final targets. We have maybe 4 months before they reach human space. Morrison nodded. He had always known this moment would come. The question was whether humanity would face it alone or with whatever remained of galactic civilization. Open a channel to all remaining governments, he ordered. When the desperate alien faces appeared on his screens again, Morrison's voice was cold and steady. I'll make this simple. You ignored our warning. You dismissed our evidence. You voted to censure us for trying to save your lives. Now you want our help. Please, whispered the Velnari matriarch, her ancient voice broken with grief. We were wrong. Our pride blinded us. Don't let our people pay for our mistakes. Morrison stared at her for a long moment. Your leaders will pay. The question is whether your people pay with them. He cut the transmission and turned to his officers. Colonel Brooks, what's the status of our refugee processing facilities? We can handle maybe 10 million beings across all our worlds, sir. Basic shelter. And food only. And, Commander Davis, how many alien civilians are we looking at? Davis checked his calculations. Conservative estimate? 800 million survivors across all species. Maybe more. Morrison closed his eyes. Even if humanity wanted to save them all, it was impossible. There simply wasn't room, wasn't resources, wasn't time. Sir, Commander Davis waited for orders. Morrison opened his eyes and looked out at the stars where entire civilizations were dying. We save who we can, but only those whose governments agree to complete military integration under human command. No negotiations, no conditions, no exceptions. And if they refuse? Morrison's voice was as cold as the space between stars. Then they can face the Devourers with the same pride that got them into this mess. As if summoned by his words, another system on the galactic map turned red. The Korthax homeworld had gone silent. The hunt had begun, and humanity was the only predator left standing. 6 months had passed since the Devourers began their harvest. The galaxy that once held 7 thriving civilizations now echoed with silence. Entire star systems had been stripped bare, their planets reduced to empty husks drifting in space. Captain Ben Taylor stood in the briefing room aboard the UTS Striker, studying the holographic display of a Devourer harvesting fleet. 3 massive biomechanical ships, each one 10 kilometers long, were feeding on what had once been a Korthax mining colony. The energy collectors are here, and here. Dr. Alex Turner pointed to glowing nodes along the alien ships. If we can destroy those, they can't process the matter they consume. Our simulations show they'll have to retreat to avoid starvation. General Nick Stone, scarred from a dozen ground wars, leaned forward. What about their defenses? Heavy, Turner admitted, but they're designed to fight large, slow targets. The old alien warships were built for honor and ceremony, not for real combat. Our ships are different. Ben nodded. Human warships were ugly, brutal things built for one purpose: killing. No elegant curves or artistic flourishes, just armor, weapons, and speed. The plan is simple, Ben continued. We hit them fast and hard, target their energy collectors, then get out before they can respond. No heroics, no last stands. We're not trying to win a glorious battle. We're trying to make them bleed. Lieutenant Commander Beth Hayes raised her hand. She commanded the stealth ship UTS Shadow, invisible to most sensors. What about survivors in the system? Ben's expression darkened. There are no survivors. The Devourers don't take prisoners. The attack began at dawn, ship time. Beth's stealth vessels moved in first, their hulls coated with materials that absorbed sensor waves. Behind them came Ben's strike force, 12 fast attack ships armed, with the new particle cannons. The Devourers were feeding, their massive forms pulsing with absorbed energy as they consumed the dead colony. They didn't notice the human ships until the first volley of weapons fire tore into their energy collectors. Ben watched from his command chair as purple fire erupted along the nearest Devourer ship. Direct hit on Collector Node 1. Turner, are you seeing this? Confirmed. Energy output is dropping. They're losing the ability to process matter. The Devourer ship began to turn, its massive bulk moving slowly toward the human fleet. But Ben's ships were already moving, their engines pushing them away at maximum acceleration. All ships execute attack pattern Gamma, hit and run just like we practiced. The second wave of human ships came in from a different angle, targeting the next Devourer vessel. More purple fire, more damaged collectors. The aliens were powerful, but they were slow to react. They had spent 1,000 years fighting civilizations that stood and fought honorably. Humanity had no such illusions about honor. Third target is moving to intercept, reported Commander Davis, launching some kind of biomechanical fighters. Ben watched the tactical display as dozens of smaller craft emerged from the Devourer ship. They moved faster than the motherships, but they were still thinking like the old galactic militaries. Beth, you're up. Lieutenant Commander Hayes smiled grimly. Copy that. Shadow Squadron, deploy the surprises. The human stealth ships had been carrying a special cargo. Thousands of small drones, each one programmed with simple instructions. Find enemy fighters. Ram them. Explode. The Devourer fighters ran straight into the drone swarm. Explosions lit up space as the simple but effective weapons did their work. Within minutes, the entire enemy fighter screen was destroyed. Collector nodes on Target 3 are down, Turner reported. All 3 ships are losing power. Ben watched as the massive Devourer vessels began to withdraw from the system. For the first time in recorded history, the ancient enemy was retreating. All 6 ships returned to base. We've got what we came for. The news of humanity's victory spread quickly among the surviving alien populations. Refugee camps on human worlds buzzed with excitement and hope. For the first time since the invasion began, someone had hurt the Devourers, but Admiral Morrison was not celebrating. In his office aboard the UTS Vengeance, he met with the leaders of the surviving alien governments. The beings who had once ruled star systems now sat as refugees, begging for humanity's protection. We've proven the Devourers can be hurt, Morrison said. But this was just one fleet. Our intelligence suggests there are at least 50 more harvesting groups active across the galaxy. The Velnari matriarch, now ancient and frail from the stress of losing her homeworld, spoke first. Admiral, we are prepared to offer you anything. Our remaining technology, our scientists, our complete cooperation. Please help us reclaim our worlds. Morrison looked at her steadily. Your worlds are gone, consumed. There's nothing left to reclaim. The silence that followed was heavy with grief and desperation. Then what do you propose? Asked the surviving Zalathi leader, a young engineer named Kextar who had been off-world when his planet died. Integration, Morrison replied. Complete technological sharing, military cooperation under human command, and formal acknowledgement that humanity leads this war effort. Some of the alien leaders shifted uncomfortably, even facing extinction. Their pride still chafed at the idea of human leadership. What if we refuse? Asked a Korthax merchant prince who had escaped with a small trade fleet. Morrison's expression didn't change. Then you can try to fight the Devourers on your own. See how that works out for you. The merchant prince fell silent. Everyone in the room remembered how well their independent defense efforts had gone. Kextar was the first to speak. On behalf of the Zalathi survivors, I formally surrender our military authority to the Terran Defense Coalition. Our ships, our technology, our people are yours to command. One by one, the other leaders followed, some with grace, others with barely concealed resentment, but they all knew the truth. Humanity was their only hope. Captain Joe Martinez entered the room with a data pad. Sir, we're receiving reports from our monitoring stations. 3 more Devourer fleets have been detected moving toward the outer rim colonies. Morrison stood and walked to the star chart on his wall. Red zones marked the consumed systems, a spreading cancer across the galaxy. But now there were blue zones too. systems under human protection, defended by the growing Allied fleet. How many ships do we have ready for combat? 73 human vessels plus 26 alien ships that we've retrofitted with our weapon systems, Martinez reported. Morrison nodded. It's not enough to defend everything. We need to go on the offensive. Sir? Commander Davis looked confused. We're still outnumbered at least 10-1. Morrison turned back to the alien leaders. You came to us because we're different from you, because we think like warriors instead of diplomats. Well, this is how warriors think. He activated the holographic display, showing the locations of known Devourer fleets. We don't try to defend every system. We hunt them down one by one. We make them afraid. We show them that this galaxy has teeth now. The Velnari matriarch looked troubled. Admiral, surely there must be a way to negotiate with them, to find a peaceful solution. Morrison stared at her for a long moment. Matriarch, with respect, that kind of thinking is why your homeworld is a dead rock floating in space. The Devourers don't negotiate, they consume. The only language they understand is force. He turned back to the star chart. We start with the fleet in the Rigel sector. 12 ships currently feeding on a former Korthax industrial world. We hit them tomorrow. As the alien leaders filed out, Morrison remained alone with his human officers. Commander Davis waited until the room was clear before speaking. Jake, some of them are never going to accept human authority willingly. Morrison nodded. I know, but they'll accept it, willing or not, because the alternative is extinction. Outside, the window, the human fleet was growing. Ships from a dozen different species, all flying under human command, all armed with human weapons, all following human tactics. The hunt had begun in earnest. Admiral Grace Ford stood on the bridge of the UTS Retribution, watching as her fleet prepared for the largest offensive operation in human history. Operation Nightfall would strike 12 Devourer fleets simultaneously across 6 star systems. It was bold, dangerous, and exactly the kind of plan that would have horrified the old Galactic Council. All ships report ready, Admiral, Captain Joe Martinez said from his station. The alien crews have integrated well with our tactical systems. Grace nodded. The Zalathi had proven especially valuable, their advanced shield technology combining perfectly with human weapons. Young Kextar had personally overseen the integration, working 18-hour days to make their ships combat-ready. Commander Lee, are the psychological warfare broadcasts ready? Commander Susan Lee smiled coldly. Every surviving alien government will receive our message simultaneously with the attack. The choice is simple. Join us or burn alone. 8 months had passed since humanity began hunting the Devourers. The alien refugees had watched in amazement as human fleets struck again and again, always targeting the enemy's weaknesses, always withdrawing before taking serious losses. It was a kind of warfare none of them had ever imagined, but some alien leaders still clung to their pride. The remaining Korthax nobles refused to accept human authority, hiding in their distant trade stations and demanding equal partnership instead of integration. The Velnari Council on their refugee world spent more time debating protocols than building weapons. They still believed they could negotiate their way out of extinction. Admiral Ford, we're receiving the go signal from Admiral Morrison, the communications officer reported. Grace looked out at her fleet. 37 human ships and 15 alien vessels, all armed with the new hybrid weapons that Dr. Turner's team had developed. They had learned to reverse engineer Devourer technology, turning the enemy's own power against them. All ships, commence Operation Nightfall. The attack began in 6 systems at once. Grace's fleet hit the Devourer harvesting group in the Centauri sector while Admiral Morrison's force struck in the Vega system. Smaller human squadrons targeted isolated enemy ships throughout the outer rim. The battle was brutal and efficient. Human ships used their speed and maneuverability to stay clear of the massive Devourer vessels, while their weapons tore into the biomechanical hulls. The alien ships under human command followed orders precisely, their crews finally understanding that survival meant abandoning their old ideas about honorable combat. Direct hit on the primary harvester, reported Lieutenant Nash from the weapons station. Their biomechanical systems are failing. Grace watched as the massive devourer ship began to convulse, its living hull writhing in what might have been pain. The hybrid weapons didn't just damage the aliens. They infected their biomechanical systems with viruses designed to corrupt their regenerative abilities. Target the secondary harvester. Full spread, all batteries. The second devourer ship tried to flee, but it was too slow. Human weapons caught it as it attempted to retreat, tearing apart its energy collectors and leaving it drifting helplessly in space. But Grace wasn't satisfied with just disabling the ships. Her orders were clear. No mercy. Deploy the boarding parties. Captain Martinez looked surprised. Admiral, the ships are neutralized. Shouldn't we move to the next target? Grace's expression was stone cold. Our orders are to capture at least one ship intact. We need their collective memory banks. Every devourer location, every tactical database, everything they know. The boarding operation was unlike anything in galactic history. Human Marines in powered armor cut through the biomechanical hulls while alien specialists used their knowledge of exotic technology to navigate the living ships. It took 6 hours of fighting through corridors that bled and screamed. But they succeeded. Dr. Turner's voice came through the comm from deep inside the captured devourer ship. We've accessed their central memory core. Admiral, this is incredible. They have the locations of every devourer fleet in the galaxy. 43 active harvesting groups, plus their main staging area in dark space. Grace felt a cold satisfaction. Download everything. We're going to end this war. While the battles raged across the galaxy, Commander Lee's psychological warfare campaign reached every surviving alien government. The broadcasts were simple and direct. Footage of human victories, images of devourer ships burning, and a clear message. The Terran Defense Coalition offers protection to all surviving civilizations. Lee's voice carried across dozens of star systems. Integration under human military command guarantees safety. Resistance guarantees extinction. Choose wisely. The responses came quickly. Some alien leaders finally abandoned their pride and begged for human protection. Others, like the Korthax, noble houses, declared they would never bow to primitive human warmongers and vowed to fight independently. Admiral Morrison received their declarations aboard the UTS Vengeance with grim satisfaction. Commander Lee broadcast our response to the Korthax territories. Lee's message was brief. The Terran Defense Coalition respects your decision to fight alone. Do not request assistance when the Devourers come for you. 3 days later, the RU, last independent Korthax fleet, engaged a Devourer harvesting group near their hidden shipyards. The battle lasted 14 minutes. When the humans arrived to investigate, they found nothing but debris and the biomechanical ships feeding on the wreckage. The surviving Korthax civilians, now leaderless and desperate, surrendered unconditionally. They were relocated to human-controlled worlds under strict supervision, their remaining technology confiscated for the war effort. Captain Martinez coordinated the refugee integration from his base on New Terra. Admiral Morrison, we're processing about 50,000 alien civilians per day. The Zalathi are adapting well to human military structure, but some of the others are struggling. Morrison studied the reports. What kind of struggling? Cultural issues, mostly. They're not used to our direct command style. Some are requesting committees to discuss tactical decisions. Morrison's laugh was harsh. Committees. That's how they ended up as refugees in the first place. Make it clear. They follow orders or they get reassigned to non-combat duties. The integration wasn't just military. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists to mass-produce the hybrid weapons. Zalathi shield generators were installed on human ships. Velnari computational systems were reprogrammed for military targeting. Every piece of useful alien technology was absorbed into the human war machine. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Turner's team finished analyzing the captured Devourer memory banks. Standing in his laboratory aboard the research vessel, UTS Discovery, Turner called an emergency meeting with all senior commanders. We found something, he announced, bringing up a holographic star map. The Devourers aren't just harvesting randomly, They're collecting specific resources for something big. Admiral Morrison leaned forward. What kind of something? A construction project in dark space, beyond the galactic rim. They're building something massive using materials from every civilization they've consumed. The hologram showed a structure that defied comprehension. Larger than a star system, it's biomechanical. Components pulsed with the absorbed energy of 1,000 dead worlds. What is it? Asked Admiral Ford. Turner's expression was grim. According to their records, it's a gateway. The Devourers aren't from this universe. They're from somewhere else, and they're building a permanent bridge between their reality and ours. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The current invasion was just the beginning. The Devourers were preparing to bring their entire civilization through to consume not just this galaxy, but every galaxy in local space. Morrison stood slowly, his face hard with determination. How long until it's operational? 6 months, maybe? Less. Morrison looked around the room at his officers, human and alien alike. Then we have 6 months to destroy it, and every devourer in this galaxy. He activated the fleet-wide communication system, his voice carrying to every ship under human command. All units, this is Admiral Morrison. We've learned the enemy's true plan. They intend to open a gateway that will doom not just our galaxy, but every world beyond. This is no longer about survival. This is about ensuring these creatures never threaten anyone, anywhere, ever again. The response was immediate. Every ship captain, human and alien, acknowledged the orders. They had seen what mercy got them. They had watched their proud civilizations burn while they debated and discussed. Now they would hunt without mercy, until every last devourer was dead and their gateway lay in ruins. The real war was about to begin. The final battle took place in the dark space beyond the galactic rim, where no stars shone and only the pale glow of the Devourer gateway provided any light. Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison commanded over 200 ships, the largest armada in galactic history. Human vessels flew alongside Zalathi cruisers, Velnari science ships, and even retrofitted Korthax traders, all united under one flag. The gateway stretched across space like a wound in reality itself. Biomechanical structures the size of moons pulsed with stolen energy, while massive devourer ships swarmed around it like insects protecting their hive. It was beautiful and terrible, a monument to 1,000 consumed civilizations. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison, his voice carried across the fleet. Today we end this, not just for our worlds, but for every world that will ever be. No retreat, no surrender, no mercy. The battle began with humanity's signature move, a coordinated strike from multiple directions. Admiral Grace Ford led the main assault while smaller groups hit the gateway's support structures. But this time was different. The Devourers were ready, and they fought with the desperation of beings facing extinction. Captain Ben Taylor commanded the Special Operations Force that penetrated the gateway's central structure. His team included both humans and aliens, all volunteers for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. We're inside, Ben reported, as his soldiers fought through corridors that screamed and bled. The core is 2 kilometers down, beginning descent, now. Outside, the space battle raged with a fury that had never been seen before. Devourer ships fell by the dozens, but they kept coming, emerging from the gateway in endless streams. For every enemy vessel destroyed, 2 more took its place. Admiral, we're being overwhelmed, reported Commander Roy Davis from the UTS Striker. They have too many ships. Morrison watched the tactical display with cold calculation. He had expected this. The final battle was never going to be won by numbers or firepower alone. Execute Protocol 7, he ordered. Across the fleet, human ships began a synchronized retreat, drawing the Devourer forces away from the gateway. It looked like a rout like humanity's final defeat. The enemy ships pursued eagerly, sensing victory. They didn't notice the small group of modified freighters that slipped through their lines and approached the gateway's base structure. Dr. Alex Turner had spent 6 months preparing for this moment. The freighters carried his latest creation, hybrid bombs that combined human nuclear technology with captured Devourer biomechanical systems. Each one was designed to create a chain reaction that would tear the gateway apart from within. "Bombs are in position," Turner reported from his lead ship. "Detonation in 60 seconds. But the Devourers realized the trap too late. Their ships turned back toward the gateway, racing to stop the humans. Massive biomechanical vessels bore down on Turner's small fleet. 30 seconds, Turner continued calmly as enemy fire tore through space around him. Inside the gateway, Ben Taylor's team reached the core chamber. The heart of the structure was a massive biomechanical brain, pulsing with the consciousness of every consumed civilization. It whispered to them in 1,000 dead languages, promising peace if they would just surrender. "Charges set," Ben reported. 10 seconds to detonation. Morrison closed his eyes and waited. Everything depended on the next few moments. The explosions came simultaneously from inside and outside the gateway. Turner's hybrid bombs tore through the support structures while Ben's charges destroyed the central core. The massive construct began to collapse, its biomechanical components writhing as they died. But the gateway's destruction created a shockwave that rippled through space. Every ship within 100 kilometers was caught in the blast. Turner's freighters vanished instantly. Ben's team never made it out of the collapsing structure. Morrison felt each loss like a physical blow, but he didn't stop watching. The gateway was falling apart, and with it, the connection to the Devourer home dimension was severing. The remaining enemy ships, cut off from reinforcement, began to retreat into dark space. "All ships pursue and destroy," Morrison ordered. "Don't let any escape." The hunt that followed lasted 3 days. Human-led fleets tracked down every remaining Devourer ship, showing the same mercy the aliens had shown to galactic civilization. When it was over, space was littered with biomechanical debris, and the ancient enemy was extinct. 1 year later, President Ellen Murphy stood before the assembled representatives of what had once been the Galactic Harmony Council. The chamber was the same, but everything else had changed. Human guards stood at every entrance. The Terran flag hung where the old council symbol used to be. "The Terran hegemony will ensure that such a catastrophe never happens again," Murphy announced to the gathered aliens. "We will maintain the peace through strength, not through wishful thinking." The surviving alien populations had learned hard lessons about the price of pride. They listened respectfully as Murphy outlined the new galactic order. Human ships would patrol every system. Human commanders would oversee all military forces. Human scientists would monitor for any sign of future threats. Fleet Admiral Morrison, now the Supreme Commander of all galactic forces, established defense stations throughout known space. The old philosophy of peaceful cooperation was replaced by practical vigilance. Every world contributed resources to the military, and every species accepted human leadership without question. Some alien leaders had initially resisted the new order. They spoke of democracy, of equality, of the old ways of doing things. Morrison's response was always the same. He would take them to the memorial sites where their homeworlds used to be, where empty space now marked the graves of billions who had died because their leaders valued pride over preparation. Director Lisa Carter, now head of the Galactic Research Consortium, oversaw the study of captured Devourer technology. Her teams worked to ensure that humanity would be ready for any future threat, no matter how advanced or alien. "We've learned something important," she told Morrison during one of their regular briefings. The Devourer's own records show they were fleeing from something even worse, something that destroyed their original home dimension. Morrison nodded grimly. "Then we'll be ready for that too." Marshal Ben Taylor's name was carved into the memorial wall along with the thousands of others who had died in the final battle. But his sacrifice had meaning now. The galaxy was safe, united under human leadership, prepared for anything that might emerge from the dark spaces between stars. The ceremony concluding the first year of the Terran hegemony was simple and solemn. Representatives from every surviving species stood together as Morrison delivered the final speech. "We did not seek to rule the galaxy," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Leadership was forced upon us by the failure of those who came before. We accepted that burden because someone had to, because the alternative was extinction. He paused, looking out at the faces both human and alien. 1,000 years ago, the galaxy ignored warnings about the devourers. Billions died because pride mattered more than preparation. We will never make that mistake again. A new inscription was carved into the stone above the chamber entrance, visible to everyone who entered. The words were simple, written in every known language. They ignored humanity's warning. We will never ignore another threat. The age of naive optimism was over. The age of human vigilance had begun. Outside the chamber windows, patrol ships moved through space in precise formations. Human crews worked alongside alien specialists, all of them trained to recognize and respond to any sign of danger. The galaxy was no longer a place of wishful thinking and diplomatic niceties. It was a fortress, and humanity were its guardians. The hunt would never end.